Colman, thank you so much for coming into Hallfield today. It's a real honour and a real pleasure. Giving up so much time to talk to the children. You've just been talking to year 7 and 8 now. They were absolutely fascinated. Their questions were brilliant.
They were.
Better than mine. And your answers, they were so interested in what you were saying. So really appreciate that. And of course, you're coming back tomorrow night.
Yes, I look forward to that.
To talk to a more grown-up audience.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to be here. It's 60 years since I was last within these walls.
Okay.
I left I was 12 when I left, almost 13. And so it's nice to come back here. And I've seen on your honours boards my brother's name and my son's name. So that's very nice for me too.
Fantastic. So tell me a little bit about your memories of Hallfield School then as a boy.
They were very good memories. It was run under an extremely strict regime by a headmaster called Mr. Rigby, who was a very strong disciplinarian, and he terrorised not just the boys but the staff and the parents. But it did instill a form of discipline, which I've no doubt was very good for us. And I really enjoyed my time here. I was very well taught, and it provided the foundations for a successful education when I went away to boarding school and then to university. So I've always felt grateful to Hallfield because it provided me with a very sound base.
So you moved on from Hallfield to Stonyhurst and
Yes.
then Jesus College, Cambridge.
Yes.
So at what point on that journey did you decide that law was going to be the career for you?
When I was doing my A-levels, I came from a medical family, and there was obviously encouragement from them to go into medicine, and being an awkward teenager, that was the last thing I wanted to do. And for no very good reason, I thought that law might be an interesting thing to do as a career, not knowing very much about it. And so I plumped to do that for that not very good reason, really. There wasn't a strong vocation or anything of that sort.
And why particular sort of criminal law then?
Well, when I started in the law as a barrister, I did a bit of everything, as people did in those days. You didn't specialise right from the start. And so I did criminal work, I did civil work, and I did family work. And I found that I enjoyed criminal law the most, and I found that people were prepared to give me good work doing criminal work. I was quite successful from relatively early on, and so it was just a question of finding out what suited me and what I could sell myself to the solicitor's profession, who send the barristers their work, as being competent in.
And I think law is still a very competitive area to get into.
Extremely so.
As indeed is medicine.
Yeah.
So thinking about young people starting out a career in law, what advice would you give them?
Well, you've got to start thinking about a career in law much earlier than you did in my day. You need, once you get to university to study law, to be thinking of what your next move is and setting up interviews and work experience and that sort whilst you are at university. I never gave any of that a thought while I was at university because the conditions weren't as cutthroat and competitive as they are today. So you need to start early. The one thing that is much better today is that the finding of places to work is based on ability and dedication rather than simply whether your parents know somebody who can effect an introduction. It's all merit-based these days, and that's very important. But it then puts the pressure on the individual to do the necessary work to gain the qualifications and experience before going into the law.
So think about sort of the qualities in terms of that you need in order to become a successful barrister. What would you say they are? First
and foremost, hard work. It's so much about preparing your cases and preparing again. There's no substitute for that. Obviously, you have to have ability, but hard work is very important. You have to have a bit of luck, and you have to be determined to do your best for your client. That is what the professional clients, solicitors value most. It's seeing somebody who is determined to fight the case.
So you're talking about, so you moved through your career in law and eventually ended up as a justice of appeal. What attracted you to join the judiciary in the sense that some barristers remain barristers, not every barrister is attracted to becoming a judge, but what was the appeal for you?
After I'd been a barrister for nearly 20 years, I applied to be a part-time judge, which means working for about a month a year alongside your professional practice. And I enjoyed, in effect, sitting on the other side of the bench. About 10 years later, after I'd started doing part-time judging, I got approached by the Lord Chancellor, who makes the judicial appointments, and offered a High Court judgeship. The system is different these days. You have to apply and provide references and demonstrate your suitability. In my day, it was like a big hand coming from the sky, no doubt on the recommendation of other judges and that sort of thing. So it was a much less open process. But I'd been a pretty successful junior barrister and then a QC, and I think, without being vain, had been recognised as one of the leading barristers in the Midlands. And so my name would have come up for consideration. So that's how it happened.
Yeah.
And I thought very carefully about taking the job because I very much enjoyed what I was doing as a QC. Wonderfully satisfying life. But I thought I would be missing something if I didn't take the opportunity, and I never regretted it.
You presided over some very famous or infamous cases, from sort of Afghan warlords, drug gang leaders, and obviously the Stephen Lawrence trial.
Yeah.
Huge amounts of pressure, public profile. How do you sort of deal with that sort of pressure in your sort of everyday life with interest from the media, etc.?
Well, you have to keep your professional life and your personal life separate. And I was used to doing that from my work as a barrister. I tried to keep the two separate. And it's the same as a judge. And as a person, I've kept a pretty low profile as a judge. I just wanted to do the job and not any more than that. And most judges are like that. I think people would find it hard to name many judges in this country because the whole nature of the job is to keep your head down from any sort of profile and just do the job, let your work do the talking for you. So I was used to the pressures of doing large cases as a QC by the time I became a judge, and it was just a continuation of that process, really.
Just reflecting on the Stephen Lawrence case and perhaps the McPherson report, coining the phrase, obviously, institutional racism. Do you think we're much further on with that now, thinking about recent cases in the Met Police in terms of racism? Do you think we have moved forward in the last decade?
I find it depressing that there should have been a report as recently as yesterday which shows that there are still serious problems identified in the Met in relation to racism and other forms of discrimination. If it's in the Met, it's likely to be in other police forces as well. I think in society as a whole that we have moved on in eliminating discrimination of all sorts. I doubt very much whether we will ever eliminate it because it's in the nature of the human condition that people will have prejudices which are not rational. I think things have got better, and I think we can recognise discrimination better and counteract it better. That is my hope for the future.
Is there anything else you think we should be doing to eradicate prejudice and racism?
Well, I think a lot of it is about educating people better. So much prejudice arises from ignorance. And so I think in schools in particular, you can provide people with the basis of a good set of ethics, and so that they can recognise and call out irrational prejudice, recognise it for what it is.
You famously sat as a judge in a case without a jury.
Yes.
I think the first case in English law for 400 years,
Yes.
Heathrow warehouse robbery.
Mm.
Do you think the jury system is still fit for purpose?
Yes, I do. I was seen by some officials from the Ministry of Justice the day after I had finished the trial, which I did. They were hoping to get a favourable word from me to lead towards the restriction or abolition of jury trials in many cases. And I said very firmly to them, no, I'm a very strong believer in the jury system. I think verdicts which juries return are in 90-something% plus the correct verdict. Occasionally I've disagreed with jury verdicts, but I've seen how the jury might have reached a different verdict from the one I personally might have reached. And I could almost count on the fingers of one hand cases where I thought that the jury had gone haywire. So I firmly believe in it because I think it gives a democratic validity to the verdict of the jury, which the verdict from a single judge, no matter how many reasons are given, because you have to give full reasons, as I did in the case I tried, no matter how many reasons you give, the verdict of 12 independent people is something which provides a seal of authenticity.
So looking back on your distinguished and long career highlights or proudest moment?
Well, I don't like to call it a highlight. I would call it a proudest moment was being asked to do and then doing the Stephen Lawrence trial, which righted a historical injustice. Two other cases of mine that you have mentioned were the trial without a jury, which was a trial in fact making legal history. It was the first such trial since 1642, as I pointed out to your boys just now. And the case I did with the Afghan warlord, again, broke new ground in a different sort of way.
Did you ever feel for your own safety or the safety of your family with any of these particular cases?
Not with those cases. I had a very lame death threat in the Afghan warlord case. It was made from an internet cafe in Kabul, so I didn't really think that was going to go anywhere. I did have a much more serious death threat in a gang murder case, which I tried here in Birmingham at one point, and that was taken more seriously.
You're supporting two charities by coming to talk at Hallfield tomorrow. One is Lively Minds and the other is St Mary's Hospice in Birmingham. I just wondered why you've chosen those charities, if you have any personal connection or affiliation with them.
Yes, I was a trustee of Lively Minds, a young woman who gave up a very promising career in the law to set up the Lively Minds charity, was someone I'd worked with and admired the work she had done. It provides education to children of preschool and early school age in Ghana and Uganda. And its great strength is that it works with local providers and encourages the mothers of the children to educate the children while also educating themselves sometimes. Very worthwhile charity. And the money which is expended on it or provided by people in this country goes a very long way in those countries. So it's a very worthwhile, well-run charity. The other one is a local hospice, whose work I admire for very obvious reasons.
And what does retirement hold for you then?
Retirement holds for me more tennis, more games of chess, a lot more reading, and a lot more bike riding.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.